Hey YouTube, it's Kyle with Yoyo, and I'm going to be showing you guys today the first episode of Yoyo Wars. So what this is we're going to be comparing pretty much all the differences there is in all of yo-yoing. So, like the different strings, different yo-yos, different styles of yo-yoing, comparing even different brands of yo-yos. We might do that, and everything we can think of that has differences in yo-yoing. So for today, I'm going to be showing you guys the differences and basically versus video of responsive yo-yos versus unresponsive yo-yos. Now, this isn't exactly a versus video. I probably shouldn't have said that. It's basically a comparison and pointing out the differences. So, what these two yo-yos are, I'll explain to you what these are, this is a responsive yo-yo. Now, a lot of responsive yo-yos nowadays look something like this. This is still an unresponsive yo-yo, but if you look at the Yo-Yo Factory Whip and like the Yo-Yo Factory 1, they look like this, and they're responsive yo-yos. The one can be either or, and the Whip is unresponsive, but there are some responsive yo-yos like this. And so, for this yo-yo, this has a really, really narrow gap, and if you have seen this yo-yo at a store, maybe Big 5, Walmart, or any store, it's probably going to say in the packaging from Omega, professional yo-yo. Now that is a big fat lie for you guys. This is not a professional yo-yo. This is a beginner yo-yo. Now, they twisted the words to make you think it's professional if you put it in 2A, which is looping with two hands. And this yo-yo, unless you do some modifications to it or wrap the string around the bearing like 5 times, is not that good for looping. But this is a decent yo-yo for starting off because it will come back to your hand when you jerk on the string. Compared to the shutter right here, which is a higher end metal yo-yo, which when you jerk on the string to bring it back up will not come back to your hand unless you need to lube the bearing or clean it or there has a problem, because it should not come back to your hand. Now, taking the responsive yo-yo apart, you have this one empty plastic half piece, and then you have your axle sticking up here, then one spacer right here. Now, not all yo-yos have spacers that come out that easily, but this one does. And then this tiny bearing. Now, I'm not sure what size bearing this is because most bearings are a lot bigger than that. I will show that to you in a second here. And then one more spacer inside of here, which I'm just going to flip over and it'll pop right out. So you have 2 spacers, one on each half, and then the bearing that goes in the middle, and your really long axle. Most responsive yo-yos have a longer axle, and the pieces slide in and then screw. So putting this back together, you put your spacer in, then your bearing, and the spacer goes in with the side that is touching the bearing with little indentations because one side's flat, one side's a little grooved, which is where the bearing is going to be touching, the groove side. Now I'm going to screw this back together, and that's a little bit of like a review type thing of a responsive yo-yo type thing that you're going to find in most responsive yo-yos. Now moving to an unresponsive yo-yo, now this is a lot heavier. Obviously it's metal, and this is, I love the colors on here. It's gray with red splash. And then if you unscrew this yo-yo, one of the first things you're going to notice is the really short axle, which I do not like in unresponsive yo-yos. I'm not so sure why they did this. It might be for weight or something, but I'm not so sure. Then you can see the bearing in here. Now this bearing does not come out unless you use pliers, but if you just take a pair of pliers, pull on it, and wiggle it a little, it'll come right off. And don't be scared to do that when you need to do repairs or something. And so you can see the difference with the bearing. It's much bigger than the tiny little bearing that I just showed you. So comparing that to my finger. Now you'll see these little yellow rings right here, dark yellow. That's the response pads. Now you might be wondering what those are for. Is when you do a bind to bring an unresponsive yo-yo back up to your hand, it will not grip the string, even though you're doing a bind, if you do not have response pads. It has to have something to grip onto to come back to your hand. Now, so these are the two halves, and the thing that I don't like about short axles is it's easier to strip the threads, and I found that out a little while ago. And when I first got my first yo-yo, which was a Omega Maverick, which I have given away to somebody to start yo-yoing, it has an axle like this. Now I got the new Omega Maverick in a package, and I stripped the threads and I had to return it, and I was really upset because it came in red and I love the colors and everything. So I was really bummed out about that. And then I got this, and I've been so careful not to strip the threads, but I don't know exactly how I did it on my Omega Maverick. The axle threads must have been really thin, because usually you don't strip the threads, but always be careful when screwing your yo-yo together. So I'm just going to screw this back together here, tighten it down, and if you're worried about over-tightening your yo-yo, you shouldn't be that worried. Don't really crank it. Just make it till it's snug, and maybe go a tiny bit further, but you shouldn't really just be able to, come apart. You gotta kind of go like that, and it should be able to move. So that's a little bit of a review of unresponsive and responsive yo-yos. Now, all these yo-yos vary from shapes and colors and sizes of bearings and everything in diameter and shape, really shapes and everything. So this is a Magic N5 Desperado. It's got a nice wide gap, but it's kind of small. And this is an Asteroid plastic throw, unresponsive. All these yo-yos are unresponsive except for this one. Then my Cypher, and then the N9 by Magic yo-yos. So now you're probably wondering, well, which one's better? There is no better yo-yo, but 90% of the time, or probably 80%, you're going to be wanting an unresponsive yo-yo. I do not recommend this to a beginner, because when you're doing a trick, you're going to be very frustrated why it's not coming back to your hand when you jerk on the string. And you'd be like, I just got a really nice yo-yo, why isn't it working? Well, it's working for what it's used for. So if you just got one and it's not working well, go learn how to do a bind, and it should come back to your hand after that. But I recommend a responsive yo-yo. I don't necessarily recommend this yo-yo because it's really not that good. But I do recommend a responsive yo-yo for if you're starting in yo-yoing. But eventually you probably do want to upgrade to an unresponsive yo-yo. And then you'll be set to do all your slack tricks and green triangle tricks and other unresponsive tricks that can't be done with a responsive yo-yo. So I hope this guys helped you. Obviously, I'm going to choose the shutter as my main yo-yo, but whenever I just want to loop and do those type of classic tricks, I have to go with this, because they are impossible to do with this yo-yo, unless you have a knot. If you have a knot on your bearing, then you'll probably be able to do it, but you shouldn't have a knot, obviously. So this is usually what you're going to want, but for 2A or AA, when you have two yo-yos in your hand, this is what you're going to want. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you liked this new series, please give the video a thumbs up. And if you like more of our videos, just don't forget to subscribe. And thanks for watching, guys. Hey YouTube, it's Kyle with the first episode of Yoyo Wars. Now first off, in the first episode today, I'm going to be explaining to you what Yoyo Wars is.
You totally messed up on that.
Hey YouTube, it's Kyle with the first episode of Yoyo Wars, and I'm going to explain to you what this is. What is it?